gentlemen, welcome to the stage, it's Fern Brady!
So exciting. One of the most exciting things about this is over the last year, I've got my own audience, and I never used to have my own audience. In fact, for the first 10 years of doing comedy, people actively hated me. And now I have my own audience, and I always wondered what you would be like. I was like, will it be cool people? Will it be hipsters? You're not. It's such a specific type of person. If I was to tell you that the type of men who come to see my shows are, whenever I look at their Facebook profile pictures, they always seem to be shyly holding their pet snake and smiling into the camera. That's the type of guys that like me. Guys with pet snakes, and women who, when I look at their last social media posts, have always written something like, wish I had the strength to hurt myself tonight. These are quite intense people. And I got recognised recently. This was really exciting. I was in Southampton, and the taxi driver said, hey, don't I know you? And I was like, yeah. He went, you're that mad Scottish woman who does comedy. What a USP! He put mad first and he put comedy last. And there's a very good reason for that. I think if you're a woman doing this, people still think that I haven't planned everything I'm going to say. People still look at me and go, well, that's just a mentally ill woman that's been allowed on stage. Why is she embarrassing herself like that? Whereas Boris Johnson doesn't even need to brush his hair and gets to be in charge of the country. Do you know why? Because he's got a posh English accent and he's a guy. Right? Posh English accents get you everywhere. Prince Andrew gets to be in a paedophile ring. Not that that's something I'm aspiring to. Because he has a posh English accent. He basically admitted to being a pedo on a Newsnight interview that couldn't have been more of a car crash unless Prince Philip was driving. And he gets away with it. I'm going to make reasonable points during this show, and you'll just laugh. Why? Because I'm a Scottish working class woman. Thanks. But I live in England, so I get treated like I'm a half-wit on remand for prison. It's terrible being an intelligent woman trapped in a Scottish accent and living in England. I didn't know this was my voice till I moved to England, right? In my head, I talk like Stephen Fry, and then moved down south and started going into shops, and people just looked at me like a dog was barking at them. So I've lived there for 10 years, and it's largely great. The shops are open for ages, but one of the hardest things is every day for the last decade, what my English friends love to do to me is repeat what I'm saying back at me in a bad Scottish accent. And they always have a look in their eyes like, she is gonna love when I do this. Every day. I've got one friend that does it all the time. Her name's Hayley. She's always like, Fern, this is my impression of you. Hello, I'm Fern Brady! Thanks, Hayley. I feel so comfortable. This is my impression of you. Please don't tell everybody about the time I gave everyone at uni chlamydia. Sorry, still not getting that Cockney accent, yeah. Okay. I never really thought much about being Scottish. Then I moved to England and I became Scottish Fern, and then you realise that you're meant to live up to this cartoon version of Scottishness where you're aggressive, drunk, allergic to salad, right? Yous all know the drill. It's hard for me to live up to this, right? Because I'm quite quiet off stage. Salad, can't get enough of it. I was considered almost quite middle class growing up here. Scottish middle class, not English middle class, right? Scottish middle class is where you've been on a plane once and mum makes you eat fruit regularly. don't like drinking either. This is quite a weird thing to say as a Scottish person and a professional comedian. I don't like alcohol. And not because I'm a recovering alkie or anything. I just don't need drink to make me blunt and offensive in social situations. Guys, that is a gift I have naturally. Here's another thing. Be jealous immediately. Never needed alcohol to make me a slut. I seem to accept early on in life I enjoy pumping sea monsters. Why bother with the health risks of alcohol? Big time stoner. Who needs memories? Turns out me for this job. Oh man, I love to smoke joints, but I've had to quit it for the sake of my job because my memory was getting so bad I had to Google the phrase double bike because I no longer knew the word for tandem. I've been smoking heavily for like a year and I was like, all that stuff about memories is just government conspiracy theories. And then I went to say the name of I've been going out with the same person for 8 years, so I know his name, right? His name's Connor. I went to say his name and I thought, is this even called Connor? Who knows? Just act confident. See, when I was growing up, whenever I saw Scottish comedy on telly, it seemed to rely on slagging off Scotland, and it was a kind of shtick that was like, oh, aren't we all just fat, illiterate bastards eating chips out of bin? That's what it was, right? I don't like slagging off Scotland. I'm not comfortable with it, apart from one crucial thing, and that is the world of Scottish amateur pornography. Which I made the terrible mistake of watching. This is a real category of porn. I'm not making it up for the show. Don't watch it. But a lot of you are drinking, you easy. He's cheersing, he's seen it. Scottish porn's the most depressing porn I've ever seen. Comes a close second to Russian porn, and at least in that they're skinny, but it's in that bleak, we did this for a piece of bread kind of way. I've watched literally every Scottish porn on the internet for the purposes of this show. Some of the clips, you're like, how can I even tell these people are Scottish? There's not much dialogue. Let me tell you, I knew. With a depressing inevitability, I knew my own people. Because it was just pale, hairy white bellies smashing against each other in close up like water balloons filled with yoghurt. Every few seconds, a wee voice off camera would go, oh, aye. Or memorably, tug on my pubes, Rona! I clicked on this Pornhub clip. It said, Scottish girl fucked in London. When I put it on, literally just footage of me paying £1,000 a month to live in a basement. And I watch like amateur stuff rather than slickly shot professional stuff because it's more ethical. That's what a hipster am. It's more ethical. What they lack in muscle tone or symmetrical facial features, they make up for with a large degree of enthusiasm. You know what I mean? I can see who watches it, yeah. I've had to stop watching it and go back to the professional stuff. I'll tell you why. Firstly, can't control the soundtracks in people's homemade sex tapes. I had to turn off someone's amateur porno because they were playing the song Everybody's Changing by Keane in the background. Oh, which will come first, climax or me killing myself? And here's another thing. I don't judge any of you if you want to make a sex tape, but for the love of God, would you lock up the pets beforehand? You know the number of times I've just sadly closed my laptop during a porno? Because there's been a couple pumping away in the foreground, really happy, really oblivious to just the sight of their proud cat sauntering in the background. Meow! This is my time to shine! I put one on the other day. It had a couple were just dry humping American college amateurs, and in the background there was just a sad little Yorkshire terrier Dogs are pure innocence and goodness, just looking at them like, please take me a walk. I watch lesbian porn, mostly because straight porn is largely made for straight men, so it'll have these blowjob scenes that go on for 10 to 15 to 20 minutes. Well, why don't I just watch someone file a tax return? Men in the audience, do you hear how many more lady laughs are coming after that bit? I have like a list of little tasks that I need to get done round the house, and the one that never gets done, and I feel bad about it every day, I always think about it, is whenever I put a porn on, I'm at the beginning of a wank. It's another fantastic day as a self-employed lady. I think it'd take you seconds to put some blue tack or a bit of tape over the camera of your laptop, and you never do it. And one day someone's going to hack into my laptop and steal footage of me wanking. That's the thing, yeah? Then it's career over or the start of a glorious new career. This is what stops me doing it, I think. Don't flatter yourself. Realistically, who's going to want to watch footage of a 33-year-old woman in full winter pyjamas? Sheets pulled up to my chin because I'm a Catholic. Don't want Jesus to see. Or my dead grandparents, dirty voyeurs. Triple chins, just... completely dead-eyed. Who needs facial expressions, man? Facial expressions are for when you're with other people. There's a market for that, though. There's a market for dead-eyed Scottish women in porn. I know it. Whenever I get asked to describe my comedy, I always say it's accessible, observational stuff, suitable for the whole family, right? Then you start reading descriptions of yourself over the years. Mine's are always consistent. They're always blunt, brutal, forthright. I don't read reviews, but I saw one by accident recently. It opened with, "Fern Brady scares me." That was a nice review. Who's this scary woman they're talking about? I'm a lovable, nice girl. And I'd always wondered why people thought I was aloof. And then I was doing a show in Berlin, and a woman came up to me at the end, and she said, "Just so you know, your entire set is a description of a woman with Asperger's. You should look into it." One guy just laughed there like, "Oh, thank God she realises." It was the 10th person that had said it to me, right? One of them was me into the mirror every day. Looked into it, started getting diagnosed. I'll be honest, guys, it's not a huge surprise. I've always felt like an alien trapped in a beautiful woman's body. The rest of the show isn't a poignant unpacking of the diagnosis and how I came to terms with it, and then we all have a little cry. No. I'll just tell you where it affects me, right? I thought it'd be cracking to get to a point in comedy where people recognise you for your comedy and say they like your stuff. Then it started happening, and I was like, oh, I forgot I don't have any social skills off stage. A guy came up to me in the airport. He was like, "Hey, I've seen you on YouTube. I really like your stuff." In my head, when this happens, I'm always like, thank you so much. The way I responded to this guy, however, was by silently holding out both my hands and holding both his hands and just smiling in his face dementedly, like Kate Middleton when she meets a heroin addict at the opening of a community centre. Don't let that put you off chatting to me after. Just know I've been coached in how to talk to you by my autism therapist, Jemima. I'm not good at being diplomatic. That's my problem. And it led to me having my first scandal in comedy in the last year. Dead exciting to have a scandal as a comedian. Mine started because I was doing some material about a political party called the DUP. Now, some of you know who they are. If you don't, they're these Northern Irish Christian politicians. They hate women and gay people, even though their leader is a stone butch lesbian who doesn't realise she's gay yet. Her name is Arlene Foster. Gay marriage was illegal in Northern Ireland until I started touring this show. Coincidence? I had material about Arlene Foster saying she was a homophobe because she was secretly gay, and I then performed it on a little-known channel called BBC One. The BBC lawyers checked it. I thought I was fine. And then the programme came out 2 days later, and I was made aware of a newspaper story in the Belfast Telegraph, Protestant newspaper. This is for an American audience, but I couldn't help being like, we'll do some sectarianism for the Glasgow audience. Belfast Telegraph did a newspaper story with the headline, "The DUP demand an apology from the BBC over comedians' gay jibes." And then there was an unflattering picture of me. I was very excited. But my agent, Chris, he's always trying to control what I do on Facebook and Twitter because I'm what the industry would call a liability. He got on the phone straight away. "Don't get into an argument with these politicians. They're not messing about. They'll shoot your knees off. Stay off Twitter. Stay off the internet for one day." "Okay, Daddy, I'll be good." In my head, I'm like, I haven't felt this alive in years. I get off the phone. I went on Twitter immediately. I put up a link to the thing demanding I apologise to Arlene, and I wrote underneath, "I will apologise to Arlene Foster as soon as she licks my vag and looks disgusted." I'll make no further comment to the press because I'm a very private person. So I'm feeling alive. I'm feeling good. The only thing that bothered me about this story was the way I found out about it. And the way I found out was a gay guy in Northern Ireland tweeted me, and he tweeted me trying to cancel me because he was furious at me. He said, "How dare you say Arlene Foster is secretly gay just because she's a homophobe?" Well, can I just be honest? I think all vocal homophobes turn out to be gay in the end. It's just a waiting game. Vladimir Putin, hello. Then he said, "Butch lesbians are never a punchline." That got to me. And then he said, "Stay in your fucking lane." I was like, oh. Stay in my fucking lane. I've never been so happy to play in my life. My hands are shaking. I'm like, mate, if you're trying to say that I hate butch lesbians, someone needs to tell all the butch lesbians I've dated, because I'm a bisexual. Oh, game, set, and match. I know one clap for bisexuality in a Scottish audience. Doesn't surprise me. Like, I didn't want to say I was bisexual on Twitter or anywhere. Like, see, if I'm honest, Scotland is barely on board with smashed avocado, never mind alternative sexual orientations. It's not just us. A big part of being a bisexual is constantly being told you're not a bisexual, you're going through a phase, you're just whimsical. Oh, aye, that's me, whimsy down a T. So for years, I tried to get on board with the idea I was a straight woman that just had sex with an awful lot of women. Never thought I was a bisexual. I just thought I was a legend. Thanks for your support. This guy tweets me trying to say I hate butch women. Obviously, I know I don't, but straight away, I have to publicly beat him in the Twitter argument, don't I? I have to prove him wrong publicly. And the only way I can do that right here, right now, would be to have a three-way with a butch lady and a very timid little Irish man that I'm in a long-term relationship with. I go out with a man now. I worry when I say that there's going to be some of you going, "Oh, good, good, she's been restored to factory settings." Look, it wouldn't matter what gender my partner is. He is a civil servant who was born an old man, right? He's a very vanilla type person. And for his birthday, I said, "Listen, you can have whatever you want. You can have whatever you want, baby. I got money now." He went, "Can I have a shoe polishing kit with both black and brown shoe polish? Live your dreams. Can you imagine having a freeway with that? He'd only embarrass himself. I'd be working away on some woman being incredible. He'd be sitting at the end of the bed crying, putting us off, tears dripping onto his little shoes as he silently buffed them. I have an incredibly settled home life, right? And it's nice, but I wish it was more exciting sometimes. And the other day, I was talking to this comedian. She's much cooler than me, and she has a really cool dating life. And she said, oh, so I'm dating Jack and his girlfriend now. I'm in a throuple. Like she was getting a new kitchen. And for some reason, to keep up with the Joneses, I said, Connor and I are thinking of becoming a throuple. Went home that night, was sitting in bed next to him. He's reading the latest interest rates on moneysavingexpert.com. And I said, Connor, do you think, can we maybe get a new boyfriend or girlfriend? He went, which one of your bohemian friends have you been talking to now? What do you want to be in a throuple for? I went, well, maybe then you'd have someone to go to park run with. Because I hate it. He went, Fern, I've told you, stop asking me deviant things. You have this idea of yourself in your head that you're a mad slag that loves shagging, when really you just like coming home to me, having dinner and cuddling. I went, okay. Can we get a cat? Can we get a cat and not fuck it? Just a pet cat. When people talk about compromising in a long-term relationship, that's the kind of thing they're talking about. You start off with high aspirations, throuple, 3 ways, it descends to a pet that you don't even want. I like dogs, now we're getting a cat. Anyway, I thought I can't criticise Arlene Foster for being closeted and not say I've had a few women in my time myself. So I says I was bi properly, and this time I did it during a stand-up set on telly. And as I said it, I felt sick. I felt like really nervous about saying it, but everyone started clapping me for being a brave girl. They were very woke and progressive. And I was thinking, stop clapping me for being brave. Fuck off, man. It's only half gay, so it's only half brave. I was thinking everyone I went to school with is going to see this on telly and slag me off and say, she's just doing this because it's the easiest way of being a woke hipster. It's easier than becoming a vegan, and I'm a vegetarian, which is the bisexuality of diets. And that's how Mum and Dad found out, was they saw me talking about it on telly. Imagine that's how your mum finds out about all that, right? What all that is. That's me fingering an unbelievably tall lady. My mum phoned me up to ask me about it after the programme came out. And she asked me about it the way only a Scottish Catholic mother does, which is by not asking you. For about 10 minutes of the phone call, there was just a series of disconnected facts. Hello, Fern. I made a carrot cake today. Then I went to Zumba. Then I picked sweet peas in the garden. And then there was this terrible pause, and I knew what was coming. And she went, Fern, are you bisexual? Imagine if that was how Holly Willoughby asked Philip Schofield on the couch. The Scottish way, by screaming it in his face. I was like, yeah, Mum, and you told me it was disgusting. The first time you found out. No, I didn't. How dare you? Anyway, I've changed since you were a teenager. Because I've seen the musical Kinky Boots. And that changed everything. Isn't that amazing that art can move people in profound ways? One of Broadway's shittest musicals, Kinky Boots, turned my mum from being a homophobe into someone who pretends not to be a homophobe. And I go out with women that are like my mum. They're always quite intense, they're always fucking mental, And I'd really judge men who say they're always going out with mental women. I think it's quite misogynistic. So can I just say at this point in the show, I met my first girlfriend in a mental hospital. So she was fucking mental. Diagnosed. We both were. It was a great match. Her name was Rita. She was a tiny little skinhead butch. We were both 16-year-olds in a mental hospital. You know how it goes in your teens. You read Sylvia Plath, you go in a mental hospital. Rita used to write me these love letters that would open with things like, "Who's the funniest girl in all of Willow Grove's Children and Adolescent Psychiatric Daycare Unit?" It's Fern Brady. "Who makes the best potato prints about her feelings in occupational therapy on Thursdays with Nurse Linda?" That's right, this guy. And then there was a terrible drawing of some palm trees on a beach done in crayon, and it said, "When I look into this lassie's eyes across group therapy with that bitch Nurse Fiona, I can see the sun setting on a beach." And it's all because of... That's right! What a cracking lover I am. So Rita had given me this wonderful necklace along with a letter. The necklace was a very classy necklace from the Elizabeth Duke at Argos range. Oh good, some scum get that reference. Posh people of Glasgow, Elizabeth Duke at Argos was a range of jewellery where working class people could express earnest emotions at a fantastic price. Rita gave me this necklace. It said something on it like, "Love lasts forever," which in Rita's voice I definitely heard as a threat. And my mum found the letter and the necklace when I was 16, and she went nuts at me. She was like, "This is disgusting. This is vile." I was mortified, like, well, I guess this is how she finds out I've been fingering girls in a mental unit on my lunch break. I like how non-judgmental you guys are about that. You understand there's not much to do in women's psychiatric units. You learn to finger bang and you learn to play pool to an incredibly high standard. Then Mum stopped shouting at me and she went, "Fern, what upsets me the most is I just cannot believe you would pretend to like other girls in order to steal their jewellery." Excuse me? Now, a few of you know what's going on at this point, right? There's a type of person who sees the whole world as straight and then they tell themselves any story to get to that conclusion. My mum's one of those. My mum would rather tell herself a story in which I am a jewellery thief running some sort of a heist. Not for good diamonds, not for Chopard or Cartier diamonds. Elizabeth Duke at Argos, £10 necklaces, fingering girls against my will. All as part of the grand jewellery thief heist in a mental hospital. But you see how it happens, because they had a thing when I was a kid called Section 28, where Margaret Thatcher said that you couldn't teach primary school kids that LGBT people exist. Not teach how to give blowies or how to lick fannies, just that they exist. Right? I'm not saying this to try and be right on, but yeah, when they ban teaching things like that on the curriculum, I look back and think of the amount of utter bullshit that my teachers taught me at primary school. I went to a school where there was a crucifix on the wall of the assembly hall, there to there. Teacher told us that was the actual cross Jesus died on. Why is Jesus 1 foot tall? Why is his final resting place Scotland? I used to like to do this in class when I was 5. I was bored, right? Just move my head from side to side, something to do. Right? And my teacher said, "You know, Fern, that's all well and good, but the brain is attached to the top of the skull and it gradually comes loose, and the more you do that, the more likely it is that your brain will collapse in your skull, killing you instantly." Teachers are maniacs. I had the best year of my primary school career not being taught the curriculum. When I was 8 years old, I had a teacher, Mr. Curran. Mr. Curran was drunk the entire school year. If you're a child, this doesn't register. You just think, why is this adult more fun than all the other adults? Didn't teach us anything, just came in every day, sat us on the carpet and told us stories about walking his three-legged dog in the woods. Now, one day, he sat us all down and he said, kids, while I was walking my three-legged dog in the woods today, I found something very special. And he had a shoebox in his lap. No. He just went, oh God. I don't know what kind of school you went to, but this isn't the point in the story where he's like, it's my big willy! Now suck it, bitches. Get your mind out the gutter, because something beautiful's about to happen. He said, I found a little badger. I swear to God, he opened the shoebox and a badger come out. So beautiful. Greatest thing that had happened in my childhood at that point. Every day for a year, didn't do any arithmetic, didn't do any handwriting, just had this drunk guy stoating about with a badger in a box. One day, he said, listen, kids, I'm going out of the classroom for a bit. You're 8, you can take care of yourselves. Well, I'm down the pub. Do not get Mr. Badger out his box. He's a wild animal. I'll get him out when I come back. I was a very good kid. I never broke the rules. However, I sat next to 2 very nasty boys, Lee and Kevin. They're definitely in prison now. And I said to them, I love having Mr. Badger in class. I think he's the best thing to happen to primary 4. Lee and Kevin turned to me and said, this is hard to say. They said, that's no a badger. That's a fucking puppet in a box, you fanny. Do you know in The Matrix, when Neo finds out reality isn't real? I felt my vision go black. The room starts spinning around me. I'm shaking my head uncontrollably. No, man. Reliving the past year of my life, looking in Mr. Badger's very real eyes. Hanging out with him every day. I said, guys, I'm 8. I'm not stupid. That's a real badger. I said, I'll go to the front of the class now. I wouldn't normally do this, but I'll go to the front of the class and I'll take him out of his box and I'll show you how he's real. They went, you're a fucking spoon. If this does go to America, there's no way of translating that. Went to the front of the class. I stood in front of the box. Took all my strength to open it and look inside. Looked down. 100% a glove puppet on a pile of dead leaves. The whole school knew except for me. If you think my comedy's dark and cynical, that is the moment all hope died in my life. And they still won't teach primary school kids that LGBT people are real. I spent a year talking to a badger that doesn't exist. A week after this, I overheard our art teacher, Miss Christie, telling one of the other teachers, as if we couldn't hear, oh yes, they let go of Jim Curran last week. It turns out he was drinking heavily on the job. And those 2 boys from earlier just turned to me and went, hi, Fern, guess what? We saw him walking his dog in town. It's got 4 legs. Twist the knife in, why don't you? People in power just lie to you. I think people are getting more progressive on sexuality because I get a lot of younger people coming to my tour shows and they're so cool in terms of seeing sexuality as a spectrum, and I think it's great. And I says to my wee boyfriend, now people view it this way. Could you be anywhere else on the Kinsey scale of sexuality? And he answered really earnestly. He was like, I've thought about it, but I honestly don't think I want to suck a dick. I was like, Connor, no one likes to suck a dick. It's just a polite thing to do. Again, picking up more women, laughing at that. Very often one woman starts to clap, and do you know why? It's always because her jaw is too sore to laugh. And that's a big difference between men and women. I never went in for material on the difference between men and women, but women are definitely taught to be dead nice and polite, especially in sexual situations. And you saw where that became a problem during the whole Me Too thing, where there was a lot of my male friends during Me Too were like, well, see when a guy starts wanking in front of a woman, if she doesn't like it, why doesn't she just boot him in the balls and walk off? Because women are taught to be nice and polite. And I'll give you an example. When I was 15, I was kissing this Italian guy around the back of a disco. Chaste little kisses, no fingering. Out of nowhere, he got his lad out and started wanking in front of me, right, enthusiastically. Horrifying. Never seen a live penis before in my life. Prior to this, only ever seen a badger coming out of a box. But I didn't show I was horrified, because I knew instinctively you have to smile and not offend a man. So that was exactly what I did. Just stood back like, very good. I don't want to touch it. No, I might just keep smiling at you and walk away. Like, can he walk and wank at the same time? Yes, he can! Do you know how horrifying it is that the first time you see jizz is when it's arcing after you like ectoplasm? Well, an Italian guy chases you. Suck this, Bella. Jizz is disgusting, right? I don't want to sugarcoat it for you. I mean, I do. I wish I could. Jizz is disgusting. But women don't say it because we're very polite, and every porno treats it like it's manna from heaven. Danon. Girls get taught to improvise their way. It's so wonderful seeing couples look at each other during this. Girls get taught to improvise their way around jizz politely quite early on in life. As soon as all my female friends got their first boyfriends, they would be like, ladies, if his cum tastes disgusting, have you tried getting him to eat pineapple? A few women, they've heard that in here. What? This just shows how unfair things are between the sexes. Why is he the one getting to eat pineapple? Why am I not getting it like the delicious chaser to a disgusting shot? Then the number of male friends I have that are like, well, you know, semen is actually... Women should swallow because semen's full of amino acids and minerals and protein, so it's good for you. Good for you. All right, Gillian McKeith. Good for you, you know. Period blood has loads of iron in it. But I've never said to a guy, baby, you're looking kind of anemic. Bon appetit. I'm really interested in how much women are taught to be polite. And I'll tell you where I see it a lot is on social media. Because I started getting more people sliding into my DMs on Instagram and stuff. And women are always really polite. They're actually almost too polite because they always open with the same thing. It's always things like, hey, hope I'm not being creepy, but... And the men never open this way. And are always creepy. It's always something like, I want to be your slave and suck on your tits and call you mum. Want to see a picture of my pet snake? Then women are like, hey, hope I'm not being creepy, but where did you get your shoes from? This is how different my messages are from men and women. On Easter Sunday, I got a message from a woman that didn't know me and a guy that didn't know me. And the woman was like, hey, hope I'm not being creepy, but since it's Easter, here's a picture of my pet bunny rabbit surrounded by chocolate eggs. Have a lovely day. It's not creepy, but I can see a lot of you are like, what? A guy messaged at the same time. No words, just a picture of his erect penis next to a picture of Scottish comedian Fern Brady. Then as an afterthought, he wrote, greetings from Nova Scotia. Well, that is the worst postcard I'm ever going to receive. Look, I don't want to be anti-men by any measure. I mean, I absolutely do, but I also want to be more marketable. Shrewd businesswomen. Sometimes you send messages that are well-intentioned and then they degenerate midway through. A man messaged me. It's opened with, hello, Ms. Brady. Was enjoying clips of your comedy on YouTube. And then your beauty became more apparent. Cool. Yeah. That's really the kind of beauty every woman longs for, isn't it? Gradually apparent beauty. Wouldn't want any of that obvious beauty. I want beauty that dawns on me over time, coming into place like a magic eye picture. And a big part of being a girl doing this is you get a lot of feedback on whether, not on your jokes, but on whether people do or don't want to pump you. So I woke up in a good mood recently and I had a message on my Facebook comedy page. It was from a man in Slovakia. The message was simple. It said, hey, you suck and you look like a potato. Devastating to find out the real reason my Irish boyfriend's attracted to me. Text my boyfriend, upset, and he went, the most beautiful potato I've ever seen. Went on for 4 months. He messaged me, he messaged my agent, he messaged a few comedians. The message was always the same. Fern Brady looks like a potato. Every time I told my friends, this is the worst thing. Anytime I told my friends, they all had the same answer. The answer was never, it's okay, you don't look like a potato. They all said the same thing. Every single one of them went, well, I love potatoes. That's how you know body positivity's gone too far. Just lie and say I don't look like a potato in a wig. The whole thing of worrying about looks for women is getting worse, and I hate it because it's not a personality trait. And I was a really ugly child, so I know how horrible people are to you when you're not cute. I had big, thick milk bottle glasses. I had a mullet, and I had a moustache by the age of 10. Big old moustache. Everyone in school bullied me. Must ask you a question. Must ask you a question, badger girl. Whenever I cried to Mum about it, she was like, they're just jealous. They're just jealous, darling. Are you just pulling random parenting advice out of a book? Jealous of what? Jealous that I look like a Cuban revolutionary at the age of 10? Now, I especially hate when you're a woman going about her day, not even thinking about how you look, and a man feels the need to comment on your beauty. I'm talking about catcalling, but I feel like catcalling isn't that bad in Scotland. I think because Scottish men have an innate sense of Scottish women's tendency towards sudden violence. But I was walking around London recently, during the day, minding my own business. I walked down an alleyway. A man came out of a sexual health clinic straight away. I'm not making eye contact. And I could just sense he was going to say something. He went, hey, beautiful, want to suck my dick? Some of you are baffled by this, but there's definitely women in the audience. Yeah, you've had that happen to you, right? Any women that's had this happen to them will know There's no point getting angry at the man. There's no point saying anything. I was eating some chips at the time he said this, so as soon as he shouted at me, I knew what to do. I started to silently spray the chips I was eating out my mouth, maintaining direct eye contact the entire time. Is this beautiful now? Women in the audience, that's what you have to do. Make your catcaller regret they ever said a word to what is clearly a very disturbed individual. I'll stop at nothing. I've had guys shout at me out of passing cars for a laugh, and then the car will pull up in traffic and I will snort into my hand and drag it down the windscreen. Still want me to cheer up? My boyfriend's always like, oh, Fern, you're gonna die in a knife fight with one of these men. Good. Maybe then I'll become the patron saint of catcalling and people will start treating it like an actual problem. I'm just tired of it. And I'm very tired generally. I've been tired for the last 2 years and I don't like complaining to you about it, because it's unprofessional. So as a life hack now, anytime I'm extremely tired, I'll go, no, Fern, no. You think you're tired now, but think how tired you'd be if you had a baby! Then I go back to sleep. This is a form of practicing gratitude I think I invented. A year ago, I realised there's no bad situation in my life that cannot be improved by me imagining I have a baby. Then I go back to not having a baby. Try it. Look, it only works if you don't have a baby. If you do have a baby, I'm sure it's a magical, life-affirming experience. You love it against your will. Sounds great. This is nuts, though. So I'd always hated babies. And then last year, overnight, babies everywhere started to look cracking to me. That sounded like I fancied babies. No, man. Babies started to look so beautiful and pure and amazing. And I was like, I want a baby. So fucked up. Intellectually, I do not want a baby. I think it's a shit idea and I'd like to keep my lovely money to myself. But my body is at that sexy age where it's trying to trick me into having a baby. I was like, but Fern, if you had a baby, it would be like a friend that could never leave. Oh, you know what I'm on about. Oh, imagine being so lonely you have to shag your friends into existence. Because when you're honest, that's all a family is. Like all the families looking at each other. That's all a family is. Run out of pals, make new ones out your hole! Like magic. They'll be obligated to socialise with you, at least on Mother's Day. I love babies. I can't stop staring at babies in cafes right now. And people see me staring at babies and they think that means I'm actively trying to get pregnant. I'm not. I'm riding these thoughts out till menopause. Fingers crossed. But I was staring at a baby in a cafe and this woman I know, quite smug woman, said, oh, well, Fern, if you're thinking of having a baby, have you had a fertility test? And I was like, in a sense, yes. If that's what you want to call abortion. Really, the fertility test, I never knew I wanted. I knew it was going to play that way in this room. whenever women speak out about having one, they always feel the need to caveat it by saying, I had one, but it's a hard decision to make. Really, it's the hardest decision any woman can make. The hardest decision with mine was they said, you can have one in Leeds, Miss Brady, or you can have one much sooner in Doncaster. I was like, I'm sorry, is this the Jeremy Kyle show? Am I fuck having an abortion in Doncaster? This baby will die with dignity! In one of the financial centres of the UK. Leeds, thank you. I did a charity gig for an abortion rights group recently. It's not an easy cause to raise money for, and I thought, this is going to be cracking. Back to back. I thought back to back abortion jokes all night. I'll be with my own people. What a laugh we'll have. These bitches. I don't want to be mean, but these bitches put me on 90 minutes late on stage. I don't know how much you know the comedy world. That's very late indeed. Now, I come out thinking, I don't want to be horrible. This lack of organisation in their general lives was really what led to them. And I'm very pro-choice. Getting a part-time baby soon. That's going to be great. My brother and his wife are having a baby. I'm so excited, man. And I've been buying gifts for it. I've never bought baby gifts before. Do you know how much rubbish you can buy a baby that's unnecessary? There's so much stuff that babies don't need. You can buy formal wear for babies. Little three-piece suits for babies, you know. Little prom dresses for tiny little babies. I said to my boyfriend, why do they need little three-piece suits? And he went, well, because they might have a wedding to attend. Shut up! As if anyone at the wedding's gonna be like, have you seen the state of Charles? He showed up his whole family by coming here dressed as a fluffy teddy bear. Which, by the way, is what babies should dress as. I'm always worried about having a baby because I think it's just going to disappoint me and it's going to disappoint me in a huge way by becoming a murderer or just a banal way by becoming a recruitment consultant. And I see a lot of my pals having babies now and I find it very moving. And then I see just acquaintances that I hate follow on Facebook. And I think, you're just doing that to fill the time between now and death. It's interesting the things we do to fill the time between now and death. Some of you came to this show. That was a mistake. But I thought for ages, if I can get what I want in comedy, that's going to fill the emptiness. Then I got everything I wanted last year. I got all the work. I did a gig at Sydney Opera House, and I felt fucking nothing. Then I went back to the hotel, and I watched videos of a pig in a wig. And I felt happy. And I realised the small things make you happy. The pursuit of other stuff's pointless, right? But I'm not going to have a baby for a very specific reason. A big reason that's putting me off is when I was growing up from a town called Bathgate, Lewis Capaldi and Susan Boyle are from there, so that's how we look in that town, right? It's so cool they're doing well because it's like limited options in Bathgate, especially if you're a woman with opinions. If you're a girl at my school, you get 2 options for work experience, and they are childcare or beauty therapy. Right? That's literally the Madonna and the whore thing right there, isn't it? Take care of kids or look pretty. Don't do anything else. And that's why I don't want to have a baby. And anytime I see comments on social media going, why does such a nice girl have to say such horrible things on stage? I think, good. I'm doing my job. I'm staying away from my Bathgate destiny. I'm going to keep being that mad Scottish woman who does comedy. Yous have all been amazing. Thanks very much for coming to my show. I've been Fern Brady. Good night.
Thank you very much.